Welcome, everyone, to this month's edition of Answers with Autumn. And really, this time it's Answers with the AWB Firm because I have Bethany Gaal with me today, one of our excellent lawyers who works with our wonderful clients here. And we are going to be talking together about avoiding expensive client problems as you scale your business to 1 million plus. So you are in the right place if that is something that you're worried about or are already experiencing. A little housekeeping before we hop in. We are lawyers. We are not your lawyers unless you are actually a client of the AWB Firm. Nothing that we're talking about today is legal advice. This is all just information. We're going to be speaking generally, not using any specific state law. We're based in the United States. I'm licensed to practice in Tennessee. Bethany is licensed in Alabama. But this is kind of general recommendations and information that should apply in any U.S. state. Let's hop in. All right. So you are in the right place today if you are an established online entrepreneur. Typically, we think of an online entrepreneur as a coach, an online educator, or someone who is managing a membership or a subscription. And you've hit that, what we think of as kind of an inflection point where your business really starts to take off. You have figured out some things that work. Maybe you're still testing and changing. We're always doing that. But you've kind of hit the point in business where it's a real business and you've decided to keep scaling, and you understand that with growth, with scaling a business, your problems scale along with those. So it's time to start taking legal more seriously if you haven't already. You are probably starting to face client trust issues as you scale. There's a lot of talk, we're recording this in March of 2025, about a trust recession. There is not just the benefit of the doubt that I think a lot of folks used to give us. And especially as you scale, you're now leaving your nice, cozy, warm audience that maybe you started with. Maybe you're starting to run ads. You are doing affiliate programs. You're getting in front of people who don't just know you already. And so that is going to lead to a lower level of trust and typically will lead to more client problems. And if you're not seeing this already, congratulations, you will. This is kind of an unavoidable transition if you are scaling to 1 million plus. As your client base grows, some challenges that we see are misaligned expectations. So that may be you thought that you were selling one thing, the customer thought they were getting another thing, and feel like there was a bait and switch, whether you feel like that's appropriate or not. But we start hearing that kind of language at this level of business. We also see increased refund demands. So I think, especially in the economy that we're in right now, if someone is not just absolutely thrilled with their results or with their experience in a program or a course, they are not going to hesitate to ask for a refund because they would much rather have that money back in their pocket if they don't feel like it's helping them. We are also seeing failed payment plans, kind of for the same reason. Money is tight. We don't have that kind of slush fund that we saw during the pandemic boom years. People are really being choosier. And also, if they're having a tough time in their business, that may affect their ability to pay on an ongoing payment plan. Along those same lines, we're seeing chargebacks. So if someone is an unhappy customer, and they've already paid, they may do a chargeback with their credit card company to kind of claw that money back. And the worst thing that we are seeing is an unhappy customer, and we'll talk about this a lot more, but unhappy customers bad-mouthing coaches or course creators on social media, especially if they don't feel like a complaint has been resolved to their satisfaction. They feel like that is a point of leverage, and I don't think they're wrong, that they can use either to kind of exact some pain against the business or to try and use as leverage to change their mind to, resolve their complaint in a different way. So I'm going to toss the ball to Bethany now to share some of the real life horror stories that we are seeing. Now, of course, we are not sharing confidential client information. These are kind of like, what would you call it, like an amalgam or a mixture of some of the things that we've seen with all identifying details removed. But to give you a flavor for, we see behind the curtains of a lot of large businesses, and these are the kinds of things that people are not talking about on social media, but that we are seeing when you don't have the legal safeguards that you need and that can really derail a thriving business. So Bethany, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Autumn. Glad to be here and talk with all of you about this. Like Autumn said, if you're not seeing it yet, you will, and you can take that as a good thing in some cases because it means that you're growing and it's a growing pain. So these are just some examples that I'm going to share. Some of the most common things that we see. Like Autumn said, these are totally anonymized and kind of a mixture of a lot of different issues from different clients. One of the most common things that we have been seeing, especially lately, is issues over installment plans. Installment plans can be a great marketing tool in that you're gathering a lot of clients that you may not be able to get if you only offered that like pay up front option. But it has its own set of issues, especially if your terms surrounding the installment payment plan they're not clear up front. You need to make it absolutely clear in your terms that they are responsible for the full amount, even though they're on a payment plan. They can't just cancel that at any time. It's not a subscription. We have several clients who have spent upwards of $10,000 or more pursuing people over a few $100s in missed payments, which is obviously not where you want to be. And these clients, we send them these letters and they are unclear. They were unclear that they were obligated to this full payment amount, or they think that they didn't use the program, didn't get what they wanted out of it. And these unhappy clients are the number one reason that you might face Better Business Bureau complaints or state attorney general complaints. And then, as Autumn mentioned, unfortunate social media smear campaigns, which can really, really be damaging to your business. It's to your benefit in these cases to try your best to offer a creative solution. I know that that's hard when there's the principle of it, but we've had several clients come back and say, after they've spent these thousands and thousands, say, I wish that I had maybe given a little more in the beginning and been a little more willing to make some concessions. So, partial refunds, even letting them out of their payment plan and just kind of terminating access, or even just creatively offering something else to make them happy, some sort of substitution for whatever it is that they're complaining about, allowing them maybe to like move into the next cohort that you're doing or the next, membership term or something like that. You have to weigh the value of setting a bad precedent, which is very real. You don't want people to go around saying, oh, well, I got out of my payment plan by just not paying. You have to weigh, the principle of it and setting that bad precedent versus the time and money that you're going to spend in pursuing it and the very real risk of public disparagement. I think one important thing that people have started doing that we've seen is vetting the standards, vetting your ideal clients. I mean, setting standards and saying, if we see that someone's going to be a problem, maybe they don't make their first payment or they complain about the program or something, kind of identifying those problem clients in the beginning and setting up some vetting processes that will help you get your ideal clients. So yeah, another common issue that we have seen has been a lot of refund requests over what clients say are, unmet deliverables or unfulfilled promises or things that are in the contract laid out that they were going to get as a benefit of the program that they didn't receive. And where some of our clients are running into trouble is that they don't have an internal tracking system or some sort of, method in place to see what was promised versus what was delivered. You need to have either a software in place or some sort of, tracking system. Like, can you see whether your clients logged on to this module? Can you see, whether or not they attended a live call? Do you have anything like that where you're able to see what benefits these clients got versus what they're claiming? Substituted services, I think, can be an issue. Like, say you substitute a live call for WhatsApp or Voxer. You need to provide for that in your contract and make sure that your clients understand that everything that's explicitly laid out here, it could shift, it could change. So
give yourself a little wiggle room.
Yeah, just keep record of everything and have a system for tracking what was delivered. I think those are the two probably most common issues that we're seeing in this arena right now.
Yeah, thank you, Bethany. So I think those, kind of problems illustrate that without the proper legal protections, both your reputation and your revenue are at a serious risk. And believe me when I say we understand how stressful these situations are for you and your team, because we are the ones getting that phone call or that text, with someone just in absolute distress. When a customer demands a refund, your heart starts racing. Everybody on your team who worked with them starts scrambling and like looking at emails and trying to figure out, is what they say is true? Do we have backup? What went wrong? Like it derails your whole business. It's a drain on your mental energy. It distracts from the work that you're actually trying to do to move your business forward. And that's where we come in. So here at the AWB firm, we walk our clients through these problems week in and week out. And we really try to be that shoulder to lean on. We have excellent guidance and a clear plan to really protect your business, to walk through the flames and then hopefully, put some processes and systems in place to, you can't avoid these problems. Like we said, as you grow, there's always going to be a certain percentage of customers who are unhappy. You cannot make everyone happy. Or someone has a life circumstance or an event that just kind of throws everything into chaos, but you can set yourself up so that if and when these situations arise, that you are in a better place to resolve them. We sometimes will even step in to handle customer issues. So where we're corresponding with the unhappy customer on our client's behalf, just to, again, kind of like turn that volume down because it can be really stressful and emotional. If you feel like you're being attacked or like someone is not valuing the things that you feel like you did correctly. It just lets our clients conserve their energy for what matters the most. So a little bit of background about the AWB firm. If you are new here, we were founded in 2015, and we exclusively now work with coaches and course creators and other digital CEOs. So you've probably heard about or worked with some of our clients. They include Amy Porterfield, Rachel Rogers, Jasmine Starr, and Jay Shetty Coaching. We touch about 100 or 120 online businesses a year. So we've worked with a lot of folks in the industry over the last 10 years. And because we live and breathe online business, we really have a bird's eye view of the industry. We see trends when they're coming. So today we're going to draw on all of that experience and teach you a couple of things. So we're going to go through 3 steps that you can implement immediately to avoid most customer problems. Again, not 100%, but probably I would say 95%. And then how to navigate them when they do pop up. So again, the larger your business gets, it's inevitable. Mo money, mo problems is kind of the theme of today. All right, so step 1, we are going to start by talking about clear contracts. I know this does not feel sexy or fun, but this is really the foundation of resolving legal problems. When they pop up, this is always our first question when a client emails us and says, I've got a problem. What do we say, Bethany? Please send over the contract that they signed. So Bethany, I'll toss it to you. What is the first step to avoid client problems?
I think it all starts with just having clear contracts. You want something that is readable. You want something that's not overly complicated. You want to set fair, transparent expectations in your contract. If you have an online course or some sort of membership, you want terms of use that lay out everything that may dictate what a client gets, what a client may disagree with, and let it dictate any disputes that come up. You probably know that they're unlikely to read those terms, but you still want to make sure that you cover anything important like your refund policy, especially payment plan details and all of that in the terms, as well as on your sales and checkout page, so that it's in multiple places for people to see. They can't claim that you misrepresented or they were misled in any way, as they will try to do. If you have a higher dollar program, you may want to consider something that they have to actually scroll through and sign. They probably still won't read it, but it does make it easier than clicking, checking a box and clicking a link. However, a checkbox at checkout is legally binding. So if that's easier for you, that is legally binding, having your terms linked there. The requirement is that the customer must have the ability to review it before purchase. So yeah, I think that's the first step, is creating those clear, readable, transparent contracts.
And what should that contract include? What are some of the key things that we look for?
Yeah, well, it's just generally you want language that's fair to both sides. It kind of helps start off on the right foot for those who are reading it. You want detailed service descriptions of everything that you offer, everything that they can expect. You want to set the expectations. For terms of use, if you want to put those, what the program includes on your sales page and then kind of refer to that, then you can do it that way. Or put it on your sales page and refer to it in the terms of use.
I think what we see sometimes is folks will update or change a program for a launch, and then they forget to update their terms.
Exactly.
So that's kind of a shortcut where you can just make sure you don't forget.
Yes. Incorporate it by reference. Put it on your sales page because you're much more likely to stay on top of updating that. Even though in our opinion, you should stay on top of updating your terms as well. But
and I'll give another note. make sure you save a copy of your sales page if it's not included in the terms, so that you can say, well, what did the sales page say during this launch? Like, what did we actually promise?
Yes, exactly.
Take a screenshot, save it in your archives, just have some way to refer back to it.
Yes, great point. Refund policy, like we said earlier, is incredibly important. You need to have a clear refund policy in your contract. And just remember that a no refund policy is a refund policy. And it's generally the least problematic policy, surprisingly. That way you're kind of leaving it up to your discretion as to whether or not to offer a refund.
Yeah, we sometimes say you can always be nicer than your contract says.
Yes.
You don't have to enforce it to the letter, but we do see sometimes that folks, we always ask about this when we're working on a contract, what's your refund policy? And some people say, well, I don't give refunds, so there's no refund policy. And we're like, no, you need it. You need the refund policy in there to make clear that you do not give refunds. Otherwise, it's kind of left up in the air.
Exactly. You're not contractually obligated then to offer a refund if the clients meet the, appropriate conditions. Keep in mind, though, as you know, that a no refund policy, offering like a money back guarantee or something is a marketing tool. So you kind of have to weigh that against having a no refund policy. If someone sees a program that has a money back guarantee versus no refunds under any circumstances, it's a little more risky to go with the no refund policy. But it just makes things a lot easier on you if you have to start enforcing these things, if you anticipate refunds, refund requests, and things like that. It's not just carte blanche to never give anyone their money back. I know Autumn can speak a little bit to this.
Yeah, what we have seen when we have a client come to us with an unhappy customer asking for a refund, sometimes they actually kind of have a point that they didn't get everything that was promised to them. So let's say the coach was sick and missed a call, or the system broke and so they couldn't deliver, some promised deliverable. That does not, just because you have a no refund policy does not excuse failing to deliver. That's basically a breach of contract. And so those rules don't go away just because you have a no refund policy. Now, they're probably not entitled to a full refund if you didn't deliver, one little piece, but just kind of keep that in mind, that it's not a get out of jail free or a carte blanche to have a no refund policy.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people are moving to this show your work refund policy, essentially. Like, we'll give you your money back if you can show us that you did everything that you were supposed to in this program. You completed the modules, you attended all the calls, you did the homework, and you still are not achieving the results that you believe that you're entitled to or that we have caused you to expect. A lot of people saying that, this is kind of on the flip side of that, like people saying, I didn't use the program, so I want my money back, which this kind of goes back to having that tracking system. Did they use the program? Do you have any way to see if they actually did, were they enriched by this program? Did they get benefit from it? So yeah, the show your work refund policy, although it requires a little more work on your part, that can be a much more fair way to go about it. There's also like a limited time refund policy. You have to ask for it within 14 days or within, the first 30 days or within 30 days of completing or something like that. You want to stem off those 2 years down the road, I didn't make my money, which unfortunately we see. So set time limits, things like that.
And I'll mention, we had this come up with one client where someone literally did kind of come back from the dead, who had taken a program years ago and was asking for a refund. And the client was like, isn't there a statute of limitations? Like, how can they be bringing this claim this long after? And we looked at the some of the statutes of limitations in some states are quite long. They can be several years. And in that instance, the statute had not run. And so we were like, well, you didn't say in the contract, you didn't have any provision around that. And so it was just going to be available as long as they could legally.
Yes, that's crazy, but yes, it happens. Just one other note on refunds and money back guarantees. The FTC has very strict rules on money back guarantees. In my opinion, and Autumn, you can weigh in if you want to, it's best to avoid a money back guarantee. It helps you to avoid customer disputes in general and FTC compliance issues. It can get really hairy if you are making these you will achieve these results or your money back.
Yeah, I think it's a risk. So a lot of the things we're talking about today, we always say different business owners have different risk tolerance. And so there's never any just one answer when we ask, how can I deal with this situation or how can I comply with this law? It's often a gray area. And so I would put the money back guarantee in this gray area. If you're a really aggressive marketer, you want to grow fast, you're looking to scale, you want to be a big business, so you're dealing with lots of people. As we talked about earlier, it can be a very useful marketing tool. But I think you have to know that comes with more risk, more potential for FTC issues, more potential for having to deal with unhappy customers who are asking for the refund or saying that they met the guarantee and then or being mad when you say they don't. It opens that door. And so you just have to decide, and that can change over time. Like maybe what worked for you at $1 million is different than the risk you're willing to take at 10 million because you've got more resources. Maybe you've got the AWB firm on retainer. And so it's just not as big a deal to you when you have these issues pop up because you can just pass them off to our team. So I think that can evolve.
Yeah. Great points. The bottom line is whatever you choose for your refund policy, spell it out in your contract. Another really important provision to have is a cancellation policy or termination provision, like we like to say. These are really critical to protect your business. It needs to spell out how you can fire your client and how your client can fire you, essentially. The business should have the ability to fire the customer if they're being disrespectful, causing problems in your community, something like that. A lot of our clients have moved to having a code of conduct, essentially, in the contract that spells out customer responsibility, prohibited activities like no yelling, no harassment, no selling products. We see that a lot. People, because you have other business owners in your groups, in your memberships, you don't want them trying to sell their products. That will drive your clients away. So yeah, it's good to spell all of that out and provide for termination in case somebody violates that code of conduct. Your customers should be able to quit no matter what. And you need to, in that case, make it clear what they will or will not lose access to. Can they keep the downloaded stuff that they've used? If you have lifetime access, what is that going to look like for people that are terminated or that terminate? You just need to spell it out, make sure it's clear so that there's no coming back and arguing it. In case of termination, what happens to the money? Refer to your refund policy. Again, make sure that's all clearly spelled out. If there's a payment plan, like we talked about, in case of termination, make it clear that they're still fully responsible for the full payment. I lost my place here. Let's see. So as a practical matter, if someone quits a year-long program halfway through and they still owe money on the payment plan, it's very hard to get them to keep making payments like we discussed, even if they are contractually obligated to do so. And this is where that risk versus reward thing comes in. You may have to negotiate taking a lesser amount, a settlement, offering some sort of concession. You just need to decide beforehand probably what you're willing to do so that you don't come back months later and tens of thousands of dollars later and say, oh, I wish I had done that in the beginning.
Yeah. I was talking with a friend, so this is not a client story, but I was talking with a friend recently that I'm in a mastermind with who said, they used to have a lot of drama around this particular issue with someone quitting and not finishing the payment plan. And she said, they just drew a line in the sand and made kind of a process internally for their team to follow. And it has taken a lot of the drama out of it. Like, we don't have to decide, we don't have to think about, is this person what should we do? It's just like, nope, we've already made the decision in advance when we were calm and clear-headed, and we just know this is how we handle it. And I think she handled it by saying, they would ask for like one more payment, basically, and then ask the person leaving to sign an agreement, which I think is a great idea, kind of a termination agreement, basically saying they're not going to sue, they're waiving any claims they might have. So it's basically like you're exchanging some value. They're going to give you one more payment, or you're going to relieve them of their obligation to keep making payments. They're going to make a little bit of a concession payment, and then they're giving you the benefit of agreeing not to sue you because we do see these people come back from the grave even after they've gotten a refund or even after you have tried to do your best to make them happy. It can be a really tricky situation. So just having a plan, I think, is really helpful, Bethany.
Yes, that's a great point. When people feel entitled to a refund, whether or not they're contractually and legally entitled to one, when they feel that they are entitled to one, it gets emotional, and they may, like you said, want to go online and say things or file a lawsuit or something. So what Autumn said is a great point. We always, if you are offering some sort of concession or settlement, we always want to couple it with some sort of signed agreement where a non-disparagement or, release of claim, something like that, or both generally.
Confidentiality, ideally.
Yes, confidentiality.
So they're not going to go tell all their friends that
Yes,
they got this great deal.
exactly. And on that note, you want to, in this termination kind of realm, you want to make sure that your confidentiality and your IP provisions survive termination. So
What would that look like, Bethany?
So saying your clients are still obligated to keep the confidential information that they received in your program confidential even after they leave. And this is especially important if you have group coaching, things like that. They can't share other people's information. They are obligated by contract to keep that information confidential. They also can't go out and use your IP. They aren't, they don't get this lifetime, license to use your intellectual property, whatever that looks like for your program. So you want to make sure that in your termination provision, you make clear that these provisions survive any termination. That means they are in effect in perpetuity.
Keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, tell me about, what about if you have a membership or some kind of subscription that auto renews? How do we deal with termination in that scenario?
Well, that is its own animal, and we'll do a future training on this, but the FTC and over 20 states now have special rules on this that have very specific requirements. So if you have any kind of offer on a recurring payment, drop us a comment or send us a message and we can chat about that, because it is kind of case specific and depends on where you are and what the situation is. So
yeah, and we do have a basic guide on that we can share as well.
There you go.
Just respond, send us a quick email or a message, and we'll send that on over. All right. And as we wrap up step 1, what is the action step that we would encourage our viewers to take now to make sure that their contracts are actually protecting them?
Start with reviewing and updating your contracts, or have us look at and review your contracts. Use any trusted legal expert that you have and rely on.
And we recommend at least looking at these annually. It's a good, if you've got like a quiet time in December or January, it's a good, and you're like catching up on admin, this is a good thing to just put like a reminder annually to take a look at your terms of use or your contract for your core programs. And then if you're preparing for a launch and you're either doing a new promotion, you've got some new bonuses or changing things, just like give your contract a quick look and make sure that it actually matches what you're delivering and how you're running your program.
Yes.
All right. So step 2, we're going to talk about aligning your marketing with client delivery. So I think what we see the most common problems come when a client or a customer feels like they did not get what they expected. I think most problems in life come from, I expected this and I got that and I'm unhappy. So Bethany, talk to me more about how we see this play out.
Like you said, it's generally with unmet expectations, whether those expectations are fair or not, they are their expectations. So, a lot of this comes in when a business promises one thing and then delivers something different. Say, you have a personal brand and you promise, they're going to get access to you. You're going to be coaching live with them. It's, they're going to have all of this interaction with you because that's the draw of the business, which is, great for you. But if you have guest coaches, that can disappoint some people, unfortunately. Just as a side note, because this has become such an issue with, the bigger you get, you're not going to be able to be present on all of these calls or have FaceTime with all of these people. You're going to, guest coaches are a necessity. But
it's part of scaling. Like this is very normal. We're not saying it's bad.
No, it's great. And it means that you're growing. But it has become an issue because that is not disclosed to the client up front sometimes. So because this is such an issue, the FTC has now determined that guest coach identity, qualifications, and information is now a decision that's material to the purchase, which means that you have to disclose all of that before the customer decides to purchase your program or enroll in your membership, which is really, so if you're going to have guest coaches, that needs to be made abundantly clear so that you have those transparent expectations. If calls or events are canceled or rescheduled, that can cause unmet expectations. I think that's probably obvious. You want to give as much notice as possible if things are rescheduled, but even then, that can cause some disgruntled customers because they're not receiving what they were promised.
And I think if you have to cancel, it needs to be rescheduled. I think that is a common complaint that we see. The sales page said I would get 6 calls and I only got 4. And, the coach says, well, I was sick or I had, an emergency. And you can just cut a lot of that complaint off if you do your best to make sure.
Yes.
Delivering the bare minimum is required. Over-delivering is ideal.
Yes. Rescheduling is ideal. As we talked about earlier, substitutions, they're acceptable, but you need to make it clear in the beginning that there are things that may be substituted, and your customer needs to agree to that before they buy. So if you have to cancel a call, see if you can do like a recording or, like I said, have Voxer access or something like that. Something that provides the same value to the client, because that's where they're going to be upset, is when they don't feel that they got the value. A more subjective issue would be if they think the materials are basic or they're not helpful. Do your best to kind of cultivate unique value-adding materials. That's a tough one. I mean, the bottom line here is disappointed customers cause problems, as you know. So you want to do your best to stem that off.
Yeah. And how do we see this come up, Bethany? Through the sales process, I feel like a lot of these problems start during the sales process and then lead to disappointments later. So what insights do you have about that?
Yeah, definitely. That's the best place to stem this off, is in the sales process. And again, the bigger you get, the more sales channels you're probably going to have. You might have your website, your sales page. You may have an email marketing campaign. You may have a webinar where you get leads in, sales calls, with your sales representatives. And you need to make sure that all of those things, all of those channels are consistent. You're saying the same thing on each one. You're making the same promises and advertising the same thing. You want to steer clear of any kind of results or earnings guarantees in your marketing. It can be considered misrepresentation, actually, and almost always leads to disgruntled customers. And if you are using testimonials, which can be very powerful, you want to make sure that you have an earnings and results disclaimer, an official one on your website that just says, these results may not be typical. This is the effort that's required to get here. This is, not a normal situation. Basically just saying like, everyone's not going to get this. This is
an exceptional example.
There you go. Thank you. You do want to reflect like your success stories and all of that. So you don't want to shy away from that, but just make sure that expectations are clear that this is not what everyone gets.
And we're going to do a deep dive training on FTC regulations. There's a lot more we can say about this, but this is just kind of a be aware.
Yes, exactly.
Angel on your shoulder.
Especially if you're making those objective claims, and we can get it more into that on the other training. But, somebody lost a certain amount of pounds in a certain amount of time or made a certain amount of money.
Yeah, anything with a number in it is going to get
anything
more.
objective and provable is highly regulated. You want to properly train, if you have salespeople like closers or people on calls or anything like that, make sure that you train them properly. We've seen some issues with that, inconsistencies in the training and salespeople making promises that are not necessarily what the business can offer. So make sure that you have good people in place and a good system in place, good SOPs so that they know what to say.
Yeah, and something that I was talking with another friend about is like doing spot checks on your sales reps. Like you should be recording those sales calls so that if questions come up later, you'll have that evidence. And then, maybe once a month or once a week, you pull someone random and just make sure that you're really staying on top of what they're actually saying and promising.
Yes, exactly. Overall, just transparency is key. As long as you are clear up front with your customers, then they can't come back and say, well, I thought something different. I mean, they can come back and say that, but it makes it more difficult when you can show and prove that you were transparent and you didn't set unrealistic expectations and you were honest about the earnings and results they can expect and what's required to get there. If you want to make sure that you're keeping things up to date, like Autumn mentioned, on your sales page, if you're rerunning a launch, if you're doing something else, new and different, you want to make sure that all of your offerings and all of your terms are the same. So double check all of that, double check your contract for any changes, like the refund policy, guarantees, anything like that.
Perfect. And where do we see things really go off the rails? So we're through the sales process, we've got everybody enrolled, and now we're delivering. Like, what are the problems that we see at that point?
I know we keep harping on this, but not tracking your promised deliverables. You could omit parts of a package without realizing it. If you're substituting services, make sure the client is aware and consents.
Yeah, and I think we see this a lot with one-on-one service providers who actually, often have a list of deliverables. But even with like a high-level coaching program, sometimes there's some like done for you or done with you elements, or maybe they get a bonus call or a bonus like sales page review. Again, like there's a lot of moving parts in a launch and in running a big program. And so making sure that you actually are tracking that so that it doesn't get to the end and then someone says, well, where's this? I was expecting XYZ, and it had flown out of your brain because you had a lot of other stuff going on.
Yes, exactly. I mean, not only tracking your deliverables, what you're offering, but also tracking your client results. It'll give you a clear picture of whether or not they're achieving what you promised and whether or not they're utilizing the program. Again, if they try to come back and say, oh, I didn't use it, I want my money back. If you're tracking
I think the problems that we see are either someone's not using the program or they're not getting results. And so the clients that we have who are the most successful with dealing with unhappy customers, they see that early. They see that in month 1 or month 2 in a 6-month program. And so they're not waiting until the end. And then the client comes out of nowhere saying like, well, my revenue didn't increase like the way that you said it would.
Right.
You should be seeing those trends early on. So you can either step in, offer additional support, maybe like help them make sure that they feel like they got good, like Bethany said, they got good value. Even if they don't achieve what they had hoped, if they feel supported, often that's going to resolve a complaint.
Exactly.
Or if it seems like they just either don't have the time or energy, or they're just not doing the work, maybe you release them from the program and from their payment obligations, because it's a problem coming down the line and they're going to be complaining in your group. They're not going to be, bringing in good energy. Sometimes it's just better to like wash your hands of someone before they become a problem.
Yes. Course correct before you have to go back and sit.
All right. And like on that same note, let's talk about customer service or a client success team. I think this is a big change that we see with our clients when they hit that, $500K to $1 million, $2 million. Your team has to change as you are supporting more customers. You can't just do it all on, you can't put it all on one person. Typically, you are going to need more customer service. Even if you're selling courses, which feel like very hands off, like there's always going to be people who need help. So tell me what issues we see there, Bethany.
Yeah, just if you have our clients, generally those with excellent customer service and good client success, they have the fewest complaints. That's just the bottom line. I mean, think about that with even like a retail store or, a restaurant or something like that. If you have excellent customer service, you're less likely to have an angry customer. And as you're growing, it's critical to kind of invest in your customer service. Invest in, again, their SOPs, their tone, do audits on how they're handling things, and make sure you have good standards and procedures in place for how you're handling refund requests, failed payment plans, chargebacks, all of that. You just want to take good care of your customers. I think that's probably common sense for anyone that's in this business, but I know things can get heated.
Yeah. And I think it is an investment. It's not free to hire more help to take care of your customers.
Right.
But what we see is that it really pays dividends. First of all, in like, you're not having to give refunds or you're not having failed payment plans. So, hopefully you're collecting more revenue. And then also your customers become loyal. Like they purchase again. If you have a value ladder, like you can keep moving them up. That repeat recurring revenue from a single client is a lot easier than getting a new client. And then they'll also be your biggest advocates. They'll become referral sources. They'll be telling their friends how great an experience they had, even if like maybe something didn't go perfectly. If you can make things right, you've got a customer for life and you've got an advocate. So exactly. I think it is a really worthwhile investment.
Yes, agreed.
All right. And then I will give a bonus tip here. This is something that we have seen with a few of our clients, and it's what I would call a skinny offer. So a really high level, I mentioned the value ladder. Often at the top of a value ladder is a really expensive mastermind or an exclusive group coaching program. And what we have seen problems with is when you have a high ticket offer with not a lot included. And that to me is just a recipe for unhappy customers because they are putting a lot in. And if they don't feel like they're getting much back, they will not hesitate to make a fuss, ask for a refund, fuss about it on social media, get their friends involved. And often with the business models that we see, you may have a higher number of customers at those lower price points, but those high price points are often very profitable and are, really kind of a core element of making your business work. And if you've got problems at the top, it really is just going to cause problems all the way down. Make sure that we keep talking about giving value to your customers. Make sure that every offer that you have at every price point really makes it, that your clients just feel like they're getting a smoking deal. Like they are just getting so much value for the amount that they're putting in. That will help avoid a lot of problems too. All right, so as we wrap up step 2, what action step are we going to recommend that folks take to ensure that they're delivering what was promised?
Again, tracking. Evaluate your systems to track what was promised versus what was delivered. And Autumn, you can probably maybe make some recommendations on good software to use, or if you have any recommendations, what avenue to go for this if somebody's really lost and is not really implementing this.
Yeah, so if you're not tracking at all, I would say whatever software you're already using for other things, like you probably have a project management software like an Asana or Monday.com, even just a spreadsheet, like whatever you're already using is a good place to start. If you want to kind of take it one step up, you can use tracking software. We have our friends at Ethical Scaling. They focus on like customer success. They have a proprietary software that they use. That's a great option. There's lots of others available. And then we also have a friend, Ashley Pendergraft, who you all may know. She's Systems Over Stress is her social handle. She has templates, courses, coaching services around using Airtable for this exact thing. And she'll teach you how to use it for onboarding and, basically the whole client journey, make it really simple and easy. So I would say, pick a tool that you're going to use that makes sense for your business, but you need to be doing something.
Yes.
All right. So step 3, we're going to start to wrap up. And this is where things get really tricky. So this is, you've done your best with your contract, you've done your best during sales and delivery, and now we do have an unhappy customer. So we're going to talk about actually enforcing your contracts and what that looks like. So Bethany, what should we do when a customer complains? So presume that we've tried, we've done our best customer service. Like we've tried to resolve it, and this is just a person who is not happy. And now you've got to figure out what to do next.
Always go to the contract. See what it says about the issue. If someone's asking for a refund, what does your refund policy say? If someone wants to quit, what does your termination policy say? Did they complete the required work for the show your work refund? Something like that. Are they saying that something wasn't delivered that was never in the contract to begin with? You have a couple of options when this happens. Option 1, which is generally, what I sort of lean to as we like to say, you solve a lot more problems using honey, not a hammer. But I know that's not always realistic. So option 1 is be more generous than the contract requires, right? You can say, we went above and beyond what we were obligated to do, what we were contractually obligated to do. Look at the specific circumstances of the customer. Was there a death in the family? Was there illness? Was there some unavoidable financial issue that they weren't aware of when they signed up? It is better to be able to argue that you have gone above and beyond and show that you acted in good faith to accommodate and resolve the issue. And, there are some dangers with that approach as well.
Yeah, I'll hop in here and say, so the kind of flip side of this approach, and this is the big risk with this approach, is that people will talk. So consider the precedent that you're setting. Are you willing to make this exception every time somebody has a death in the family or every time somebody asks for a refund? Like if your policy is just like, somebody asked for a refund, we just give it, like that can spread like wildfire. So you have to think long term. This is not, again, we are growing our businesses. This is not going to be the only time that we face this issue. So kind of think about, the next time this happens, would I want to do this the same way?
Yeah. That's a really good point, and kind of leads into the next point, which is the second option, flip side of the coin, is if you feel that the contract is on your side, if your legal counsel says, okay, yeah, you're in the right contractually, legally to not offer the refund, to pursue this, to enforce this, you can stick to your guns and stick to the principle and say no refund. You can send the payment plan to collections, terminate their access, kick them out of the group, whatever that looks like for enforcing. Again, though, people talk, and you should be prepared for backlash if you stick to your guns. Unfortunately, that is just part of doing business, and it is another growing pain. You need to get it in your head that the more successful you are, and the more you stick to your guns, the more people will say stuff about you on Reddit, on social media, on whatever platform they can speak on. So yeah, just,
I think a lot of this too, it kind of comes down to your business values.
yes.
And so if that's not something that you've thought about, this inflection point is a great time to start to think about that. Like, how do I want to be known? What do I want my reputation to be? How am I interacting with people? Like, one of our core values here is like smooth, luxurious client interactions. And so that means if we have an unhappy client, we are going to absolutely bend over backwards to make them happy. Can we do it 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But do we do our very best? Yes. And we definitely take that, go above and beyond approach. Another company may have a different approach that is in line with their values. And so that's something to think about. And that also, I think, helps inform your team and making decisions. Because again, as you grow, you're not making every decision. You've got a team kind of implementing some of these things. So that's really helpful.
Yeah.
All right. So we've decided to stick to our guns, Bethany. What happens if the client is still not happy and they are emailing customer support constantly? They are sending DMs to your husband on social media. Yes, that has actually happened to one of our clients. Putting you on blast, like threatening to sue. What happens at this point?
Well, first of all, congratulations, because you're negotiating. So, welcome to the legal field. Think about your leverage. What does your contract say is number one? Are you, excuse me, in the right?
And I'll mention here, this is a good time also to like gather your evidence. So make sure not only are you in the right, but like if you had to go in front of Judge Judy and prove that you were right, that you delivered everything you promised, like how would you do that? What are your records? Sometimes it can be kind of difficult to gather that. So before you need it is a good time to go ahead. And like once it's clear it's going to be serious, it's going to be a problem. These are the kind of things that your lawyer is going to ask for if you do find yourself in this situation. And it can really help if you've already got it kind of at your fingertips.
Yes, keeping good, complete, detailed records of everything is very key. And you, at some point, depending on how far the dispute goes, you may be legally obligated to keep all of that stuff. So it's best to just do it in the beginning. So, you think you're in the right contractually, you have the evidence to prove it. You need to think about what you're willing to concede. What can you offer that's not going to be great cost to you, great cost to your business? Can you extend their payment terms? Can you maybe lessen their monthly payment? Can you give
Better
them
to get something than nothing.
Exactly. Can you offer them any additional support if they're unhappy with the goals that they've reached? Can you offer some support or something, some addition to the program that will help them reach that goal and get that value that they wanted? Access to online resources that they may not have had access to at the level that they were in, or a Facebook community, or whatever you have that you can offer them that, is not a heavy lift for you or of great cost to your business. And that kind of stuff can go a long way in a negotiation. I mean, those kind of things can, if they feel that you are giving a little more, that makes them willing to give a little more and helps you meet in the middle. Even apologizing. I'm very sorry that this didn't meet your expectations. We strive to make everyone happy. Just the language,
Understand
and the
your
tone.
disappointment. Yes, just like some
Empathy
empathy. Yeah.
Yes, empathy and tone can go a long way with people. On the flip side of that, what can you threaten that it would cost them or that they would not want to happen? I know this can feel icky, but in some situations it's warranted. Like, go public with how they've acted if they're influential in the community, and their name may have value as well. If you go public with the situation, that's probably something that they don't want. If it's a debt, sending the debt to collections or suing over the debt. I mean, that obviously is not what anybody wants. You want to show receipts, like Autumn said, having records of everything, showing, here is what was delivered, here is what you agreed to pay, here's the terms that you agreed to, here's the conduct that you violated.
Yeah, I did have a situation one time where I was negotiating with another attorney. So the unhappy person had hired an attorney, so we were negotiating, and they had made all these claims about all these terrible things that our client had done, and our client had impeccable records. And so I, sent them a long letter with, exhibits A, B, C, D, and E, proving that like the things that your client is saying are just factually incorrect. Like these things just did not happen.
Yes.
And also telling them kind of to the point of like, going public, like if you force this, if you file this lawsuit that you're threatening, like all this stuff is going to be in the public. And I don't think your client wants that. Like this is going to be embarrassing for them.
Yes.
And like, not like we want to weaponize it, but like if you're going to go, take it to that next level, we're not afraid to do it either. And so sometimes that can kind of reset someone's claims.
Yeah. And, if they're threatening to go public or say something, I think throwing out things like defamation, libel, slander, those types of things that can keep people from sharing these exaggerated or false,
Yeah, so to be defamation, slander, libel, it has someone saying something false about you. And so if you know that what they're saying is false, threatening that you could sue them for that, it just...
Yes, correct.
Making it clear that this is not a path they want to go down.
Yeah.
So at what point, we're in this messy situation. At what point should you bring in a lawyer, Bethany?
It depends on, I hate to give the lawyer answer.
It's always a depends.
Where are you in your business? What is the dispute? How aggressive are they? If you have a clear process in place for handling disputes, your team may be able to handle it. You may not need legal counsel, but if you have a client that is very toxic or emotional, which tends to happen again in these types of things, it may help to have that mediator, that kind of third party to help intervene and add some logic to the situation, legal help to that. If they threaten legal action, obviously you want to lawyer up. You don't want to try to take that on by yourself.
And if they have a lawyer, you are going to be out of your league trying to go against a lawyer.
Absolutely. Your risk in not having a lawyer is a lot higher than the cost of getting a lawyer.
Making mistakes that you don't realize that you're making.
Yes. If they make some sort of complaint to an agency, the FTC, the Better Business Bureau, the Attorney General, something like that, you could be under risk of investigation. I would hire a lawyer to just respond to these things and just make sure that you're all zipped up.
It can blow into more than the initial problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on the bright side, congratulations. You have graduated to the big leagues. I think, every mastermind retreat that I go to now, somebody's got a story like this. So now you've got a great story for your next cocktail hour. All right, we're wrapping up step 3. Bethany, what is one action that someone can take now to make enforcing their contracts easier if they do land in one of these sticky situations?
Yeah, develop a process now. Develop that standard operating procedure, get it in place, train your team on it for handling these disputes. When you guys are calm, when you're thinking clearly, when there's no personal or emotional level to this, and get it in place now.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so we're going to wrap up. If you are hearing all of these issues and problems and headaches and you do not want to waste time and lose money on these customer disputes, we would be delighted to be your lawyers on speed dial. These are the kinds of things that we handle day in and day out. So your next step, if that sounds like something that you would like to have a legal team on your team, just schedule a call to talk with us about adding a legal support team to your business. Rachel, who is helping us, is going to drop that link in the chat. If you are watching this on replay, it's really easy. It's awbfirm.com/apply. We have a really quick form that we'll ask you to fill out just to make sure we don't represent the person that you're in a dispute with. We call that a conflict. We can't be on both sides, but assuming there's no conflict, then we'll, and if it seems like we are a good fit to help you, we'll have a quick call to get to know each other and move you right along. All right, that is going to wrap up our very first live Answers with Autumn, Answers with the AWB team. Thank you everyone who has attended live. And if you're watching the replay, we look forward to staying connected with you. Have a great day. Bye, Bethany.
Bye.